What if the path to falling in love with yourself is actually not about getting beyond everything that you've seen in yourself and trying to outdo it, trying to push it away, trying to get rid of it, and then moving on and then loving yourself? What if it's actually about, instead of trying to annihilate the cringe, annihilate all of the things that you don't like about yourself? What if it's instead about actually looking at the cringe and hugging it, loving every point of where you were at on your journey? There's a book that I started reading by Nietzsche, and what was very fascinating to me was that it wasn't in the book specifically, but I started to look up other information about Nietzsche because I'm very fascinated by philosophers. And so what I discovered was that there was a quote that he had written that actually resonated with me a lot. And that quote was, I'm not going to probably not going to be able to say it word for word, but the quote was basically saying how it's not about annihilating the cringe. It's not about getting rid of the cringe. It's about pretty much annihilating the cringer. And I can imagine that we all know what cringe is, right? You look at yourself maybe a decade ago when you were not where you are now, and maybe you're like, ugh, I can't believe I was like that. Well, you were. And people have probably tried to get you to believe that it is ugly, it's disgusting, you should be ashamed of it, you should be guilty for ever having done it. Um, Newsflash, you're a fucking human being that is here to learn and grow. And because of that, there was a point in your evolution where you were not where you are now. And there's likely points in your life that you look back at that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I did that. But you don't have to be ashamed of yourself for it. You don't have to feel guilty for it. I understand if some things were really that bad. You can feel however you want to about it. But from what I've learned about the journey of self love, the journey of falling in love with yourself, is that it's not about getting beyond yourself. It's not about running away from your past. It's not about looking at different parts of your life in the past and being like, ew, that's who you were back then. You could have only ever been where you were when you were there. Learning to pet that like it's your pet animal, learning to hug that, learning to be present with that, and being like, oh, okay, that's all right, that's fine. I really appreciate this insight by Nietzsche because it was all about being present with who you were, where you were back then, rather than trying to get rid of it and push it out. And everything that I've learned about self love throughout the past 5 years of my life, maybe now, is that it's about being present. It's about hugging the little you that did not get what the little you needed. And instead, you basically went into survival and you appeased, you people pleased, you formed a bunch of defense mechanisms to save you from the pain of where you were back then. And maybe you did things that you look at now and you're like, fuck, I really regret doing that. It's okay. You're allowed to regret it. You're allowed to feel whatever it is that you feel about wherever it was that you were. You're allowed to. It's just not healthy to shame yourself. It's not healthy to dive into guilt and beat yourself up left and right because you were where you were. Sitting with the little you, crying with the little you, shouting with the little you, hugging the little you, hugging every single decision that you made, and having the audacity, even the capacity to just recognize that that's where you were, and loving the hell out of the little you for being there. You may have made decisions that you weren't happy with. You may have made decisions that make you feel so weird about yourself, so not okay with yourself. You may have been raised with people that reinforced the cringe or the looking at it in a cringy way. I can imagine that a lot of people that watch these videos have probably been somewhere in the universe of cringe-worthy content. You do something that's like, ew, cringe, that's gross. The more you judge yourself, the more you shame yourself, the more you guilt yourself, the more you buy into any of these dynamics, any of these elements that remind you that it's not okay, that you should be ashamed of yourself, that it is disgusting. You're a human. It's not an excuse for unhealthy, terrible behavior, but what I am trying to say here is that you were where you were when you were there. And the decisions that you made were the decisions that you made when you were there. You didn't know. You thought it was cool. It's okay. The coolest thing about all of this is having the capacity to look at it from afar and be like, and maybe you cry, maybe you scream, maybe you, whatever it is that you do, it's a dynamic healing experience because you're looking at it and you're like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to hate myself. I have hated myself for so many years because I'm not talking about this from this is like example. I'm not talking about this in terms of personal example. Somebody might be like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to hate myself. I've hated myself for so many years because people that swim in seas of shame and guilt and they project that outward onto other people, they were reinforcements for my shame. Actually, they taught me shame. They taught me to shame myself. They taught me to feel shame. They taught me guilt. They taught me to feel guilty for doing what it is that I want to do because it goes against something else. I learned this shit from somebody else. I don't have to carry it with me. I learned to hate myself by other people that hate themselves. I don't have to carry that with me. I don't have to feel so utterly disgusted by a survival-based past where I did a bunch of things that I regret and I feel ashamed of and I feel guilty for. I can feel the feelings to process everything, but I don't need to live there. I hope that this makes sense because it's very important to understand that the path, something that a lot of people don't understand, the path to falling in love with yourself is about falling in love with yourself in all degrees of life, from when you were a little child and you did something and somebody shamed you for it and you felt a very terrible way about it and you tried to run as far away from it as you possibly could. You tried to fill yourself with as many things as you possibly could. You tried to do a bunch of things to get rid of the painful feelings as a byproduct of the decisions that you made because you felt ashamed of it. You were shamed for it. You were made out to feel guilty that you ever, how could you possibly do X, Y, and Z? That was so disgusting. What the hell were you thinking? You're disgusting. Take a breath. You're human. He's human. She's human. We're all human. We are all knuckle draggers and mouth breathers. We all probably, maybe not everyone, depending on how you were raised, and if you were raised in survival, and if you did things from a place of trying to seek attention, if you did things from a place of trying to seek attention, you may have done things that you look at now and you were like, ew, yuck, bye. But if you instead reapproach that and you're like, oh, okay, that didn't work. Cool. Now I know better. I don't have to shame myself. I don't have to be ashamed of myself. I don't have to feel guilty because I was less developed. I was at a point in my life where I did not understand things like I do now. I did not value the things that I do now. I behaved differently. I thought differently. I felt differently. I was in survival. I was operating at the level of conscious awareness that I did in survival. I'm not in survival anymore. I don't have to hate myself. I can love myself. I can look back at every period, every degree of my evolution and be like, wow, okay, that's fine, no problem. You're awesome. So glad that you made it all this way. Let's look at every measure. Let's look at every part of that and just be like, you're good. You're here now. Let's go back and just be like, hug the hell out of little you. Yes, yes, you did it. You did it. We're here. You made it. And that's it. I mean, quite honestly, who the hell wants to walk around life hating themselves? Who wants to walk around life shaming themselves, feeling guilty for things that they don't need to? You're a human. You evolved. Now you're here. You did what you did back then. You don't have to carry around self hatred and shame and feeling guilty because you were evolving. You don't have to. You can if you want to. I don't know why you would. Your choice. But I was gonna make a funny Star Wars reference. I'm not even like that crazy of a Star Wars fan, but I was like, you know how they say like, come to the dark side, we have cookies. You're leaving the dark side. Come to the light side. We have, I don't know. It's just fun over here. The water's warm. The I don't know. I'm gonna end that off there. It's just a good time.